Hey cats, it's your Midsole man, Eddbud here. I'm back with a shoe review for you today, one that's been voted for by the viewers in fact, the Adizero Boston 12 from Adidas. I ran a poll over on the community section of the channel and this one came out on top. This is the latest iteration of the fan favourite Boston model from the 3-stripe brand. Is it going to be a thumbs up or another brick floating to the bottom of the River Thames? Let's find out. Okay, people purchased this one for 119 Earth credits, that's British pounds, from Wiggle. I have to say I'm pretty pleased I picked it up. Before we get into the main part of the review, please hit that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications when I launch the new videos too. Also give this video a thumbs up, like and share it with your running buddies. Dankeschön. This one's weighing in at 295 grams or 10.4 ounces for my UK size 11, US size 12. So that does make it a good 50 grams heavier than the Adidas 8 in my size, but I think from memory that's about 60 grams lighter than the Boston 10 was, so that's a good start. I've got approximate midsole measurements here in the heel of 41mm and about 35mm in the forefoot. That's a great deal more than the Adidas 8, so you can kind of see where these two shoes fit. It further differentiates the shoe away from its lower profile cousin. Now the big change here in the Boston 12 is the fact that they've updated the midsole. We've now got a section of Light Strike 2.0 and much more Light Strike Pro in the forefoot. In terms of the Short A durometer softness scores, I've got about 26 for the Light Strike Pro part and about 34 for the Light Strike 2.0 section. It's pretty much exactly as per the Adidas 8 that I reviewed last month. So the Light Strike Pro section comes in round about average really across all of the midsole foams that I've tried out, and the Light Strike 2.0 is a little bit firmer, so I think the average is round about 28. In the outsole there are two different softnesses of the rubber. In the Continental section here in the front I measure it at about 54 Short A, and in terms of the heel I've got about 63. If you're waiting to hear whether I think it's true to size, it is true to size. I would go with your standard size. I don't think people need to size up a half for this version of the Boston. Seems like Adidas are actually moving to a more true to size last. We will start the review with the upper first. I gotta say that this upper is super breathable. I wasn't expecting that at all. The Boston 10 was like a coffin around your foot. This one was actually really pleasant in some quite warm, sort of humid weather today. There's loads and loads of frontal holes there in the toe box for heat to pass through. I guess in the winter that'll be a two-edged sword because it'll also be a bit of a chilly shoe, but you can have it all, can you? The rear of the shoe features a very thin heel counter and the classic slingback overlay that we've seen in lots of Adidas shoes recently. And of course you've got that sort of flip out pull tab thing. I'm not a big fan of this, it's just not really needed. I do like the lace loops that run on the lateral and medial sides of the upper. I'm not too worried about the durability of those lace loops either. If you look inside you can see that they've actually been reinforced. So that does mean we've got no gusseting here on the tongue of the shoe. It's a reasonably thin tongue with a little bit of padding up through the centre, and it's almost long enough, that padding. It could have done with being a few millimeters longer. I managed to tie a runner's knot there and just about get the laces over top of it. I do like the toe box though here in the Boston 12. It's nice and wide, there's lots of room there to accommodate your foot. The mesh as well on top is quite flexible. It really does feel like there's a bit of space up there. Very different to something like the Takumi Sen. I experienced no issues in the Boston 12 trying to get a good lockdown. It was just simplicity itself. I would suggest this upper is actually better than the one that's on the Adidas Pro 3. I think you might even be able to consider going down a half size, perhaps if you have a very narrow foot, but my recommendation if you do want to pick up the Boston 12 is to go true to size. The laces are a little bit thicker than the ones that we got in the Adidas 8, and they're reasonably generous in terms of length. You won't have a problem tying a double bow, or even if you're using a runner's knot you need that extra length, it's there. Running in the shoe, oddly the upper reminds me a little bit of the Tempo Next Percent from Nike. Even the actual feel of the upper, it's got that sort of chainmail-like sort of vibe. The upper really grips around the sides of your foot. You feel nice and locked in. without it being constrictive, I suppose, and it felt really smashing, in fact, at tempo pace. No worries in terms of cleaning this upper either. If you get a medium bristle brush, you can get most of the dirt off. It just leaps off, in fact, and I've managed to clean the shoe up. Looks almost brand new, doesn't it? I didn't experience any heel slip, nothing like that. A really comfortable ride. I think after my initial runs, I'll get a 2.8 out of 3 for the upper. They could just lose this stupid tab thing at the back and give us a few extra millimeters of padding on the tongue there just to protect the top of the foot. So I hope Mr. Dassler is listening. That's what I need. Midsole, midsole, midsole now. So those of you that had the Boston 10 or 11, you probably thought it was a little bit firm. Even the people that liked it suggested it was quite firm until they sort of tenderized the midsole with like 50 or 100 miles. This one feels much better straight out of the box. I think you have to look at it from my perspective as a man who probably is represented closely by a wind sock. I prefer sort of lighter shoes, and this one is that bit lighter. Well, it's a lot lighter in fact than the Boston 10. It generally feels like it's got a little bit more pop, and the ride's just more exciting and just makes me want to put the shoe on right now and go and run in it. That's a good sign. That Boston 10 just wasn't fun to run in really at all. What's the point in owning a shoe that is like that? Well, there's no point, is there? The heel section here, which now features a lot of that Light Strike 2.0, is a lot more compressive. I wouldn't suggest it's squashy by any stretch, but it's certainly cushioned and a lot more enjoyable about there. You don't have that rigid plate straight under your heel, and there's now a better balance between that foam and the sort of more responsive Light Strike Pro stuff. And that goes much further down now below the ball of your foot, so you kind of want to land in that area. It sort of goads you on to sort of hit that sort of part of the shoe. They have tunneled out a little bit of that Light Strike 2.0 stuff as well in the heel, and that I think that's giving you a little bit more bounce. So those changes mean that this version of the Boston is way better at speed and at pace, just vastly more versatile than the last two. I did in fact buy the Boston 11, but I never bothered to review it because it was just so similar to the previous one. I think Light Strike 1.0 was just so firm you didn't really need a plate in the back. Thankfully they've gotten rid of it this time. We do have those energy rods here within the midsole. They are glass fibre apparently. They're not the same as the ones that are in the Adios Pro 3, but I don't think many people will be buying it for that. They're getting it for the foam. That's the true winner here. So the Boston 12, a vastly better shoe, certainly at the price I paid for it, and I can't help but feel thankful that Adidas have tinkered with the design and brought the Boston model back somewhere towards what it was previously. Do need to note that the insole here is quite a thin one, about 3.7 millimeters. I mean, by today's standards, sometimes you get a wodge of foam in there. You can take out the insole that is supplied, so if you want to use some other sort of aftermarket insole, then you can do that. It's not glued in or anything. I like the shoe around about 7 minutes 45 per mile pace and higher than that, so I guess that's round about target for a marathon. Would I want to race in this shoe for a marathon? I think it's still a little bit heavy for that, at least for me, though I bet loads of runners out there will be very glad to hear that. I think they could probably use it for that. I think there's just better options for a beanpole-like man. I really like the width in the forefoot area of the shoe here. It gives you this really nice wide landing platform. The Light Strike Pro just sort of juts out a little bit more, a little bit extra here. As you put your foot down, you can kind of feel it compressing outwards. As I said, the balance of the two foams is by far better this time round. Adidas have nailed it. Though I'd suggest it's still not what people loved perhaps in the Boston 9 or the previous versions. Still quite a different shoe. I did get up to around about 7 minutes 30 per mile pace. It was supposed to be like a easier run today, but the Boston 12 didn't want to do that. It wanted to go a little bit quicker, and I duly obliged. So it's one that I certainly will be keeping in the rotation in terms of the midsole. Really enjoyed it. Oddly, again, this one reminds me in terms of the midsole of the Tempo Next Percent from Nike, where you've got that very responsive, expansive amount of foam here in the forefoot area. It's a little bit like those AirPods in the Nike shoe. You just want to land on them each time, and each time you hit it, it really gives you a bit of a pop as you toe off. That's something I did not expect to say about the Boston 12. So for the midsole, after my initial runs, I'm going to give it a 2.7 out of 3. Oddly, the one thing they could improve is hollowing out a little bit more of this Light Strike 2.0 to sort of further amplify that sort of bounce in the heel. We're talking Outsole now. As usual with the 3-stripe brand, that Continental rubber there in the mid to forefoot is nice and sticky and grippy, and it features those lovely ridges that we see on something like the Prime X. It grabs the floor, people, like a sticky piece of chewing gum. Now the cutouts here will no doubt grab some seed pods, some dirt and debris, though I found the rubber really easy to clean if you've got like a hard bristle brush. And I like the fact that the energy rods are sort of sealed off here. Sometimes in the Adidas shoes you can get a lot of moisture and debris in the areas there where the energy rods are sort of exposed. That is not the case here, and I think that will improve the durability of the shoe. I think due to the more expansive rubber coverage that we've got here in the Boston 12, Adidas are certainly aiming this one more at training. They want to improve the durability, the longevity. Certainly can use over the course of a big marathon training block perhaps. And it provides a bit of differentiation between this and the Adios Pro 3 or the Sen, where they've got that sort of more smooth rubber. I think the thickness of the rubber and where they've placed it just really make this more of a trainer for me. I can see this one working very well over a range of different surfaces and terrains, mainly due to the fact that we've got these multi-direction sort of lugs and ridges, and of course there's very little exposed midsole foam here to get damaged. Also, the fact that we have the energy rods here rather than those sort of torsion blades, this one feels a little bit more compressive, just a little more comfortable underfoot, I suppose. And it makes it more befitting of some longer runs where you're going to be on your feet for an extended period of time. So very impressed by the outsole so far. We do have a few windows here where some stowaways are going to get in, but in terms of grip and traction, very, very good. The 2.8 so far out of 3 for the outsole. Quickly talking value now. So I of course picked this one up with my own earth credits, 119. I do believe the retail price is 140. I was really pleased to get it at that price. It's actually cheaper than what I paid for the Adios 8, although I've got considerably more shoe here. It's got some hallmarks for the Tempo Next Percent from Nike, and I really like that shoe. I quite liked it because it was aggressive, it made me want to run fast, and so does the Boston 12 now. I did notice as well, the more and more I ran in it, the more steps, the better and better the midsole feels. So you do need to tenderize it a little bit, people. Get your mallets out. I really like the squash here in the forefoot section of the shoe. And of course this all makes it much more versatile than the previous 2 iterations. I also think that it's a superb profile as well. It's a beautiful looking shoe. And the mesh and the fit is just so comfortable. Adidas have really struck gold here. They got the Midas touch back again. Out the box, the quality of the shoe is good as well. There's been a few dodgy ones of recent time, but here I've got no weird glue marks or sort of poorly cut materials. It's a quality item, Clark. Only really the heel padding here takes on any moisture whatsoever. It was very wet on my run today. I really like that design feature. I hate running shoes that sort of soak up loads of moisture and just feel like a slog by the end of your run. I think you could now use this for some daily runs. It's back in that sort of weight category. I mean, that weight reduction is a massive bonus here. It also means you could probably fit it into that sort of quicker long run category where you're perhaps running some slower miles and then some sections of your run that are much faster in terms of pace. At the price I got it for as well, that's like a good 40 quid or so cheaper than that Infinity Run 4. I'm not going near that one with a barge pole. Why anybody would buy any shoes from Nike now, aside from their race models like the Vaporfly and the Alphafly, I do not know. At the retail of 140, I'd suggest trying to use a code or something to get it down a little bit more. I think at 119 quid, I'd probably give this about a 2.8 out of 3 for value. All improvements here and no backward steps. If I've totaled the scores up correctly, that gives us 11.1 out of 12 for the Boston 12. Thanks to the viewers for getting me to pick this one up. I'm really pleased that I did. Have you picked up the Boston 12? What have you made of it so far? Let us know your thoughts and your opinions down in the comments. Musical interlude today comes from Andrew WK with his 2021 album, God is Partying. Now, some absolute winners on this one. It's an album of real range as well. There's some sort of metal style tracks and some almost sort of rock ballads as well. And then there's some songs that are just outright weird. Personal favourite on this one is a track called I Made It. The lyrics sort of talk about how someone's been striving towards something, going through the mire to get there. And I think it could be the best song you could ever have as you're going down the home straight of a race. It's got this energy to it and the drive to really sort of push you on through the final section, perhaps when you know you've got like a mile to go or like a couple of kilometers or something, and you're on for that PB, you know, this is the track for you. Andrew WK is able to sort of stir certain emotions within his songs that other people, you know, sort of sadly lack. There's no real sincerity to some artists' lyrics. Andrew WK certainly has that. You believe him when he says those words. So go and check out I Made It from God Is Partying by Andrew WK. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed the Boston 12 review. Hit that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications too. Also, give this video a thumbs up, like, and share it with your running buddies. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you